So 2015, I was listening to an interview and you met with the eventual founders of Definity. And I'm curious, what in that conversation made you take blockchain seriously? It's not the first time you were introduced to it, but you mentioned it was the first time you actually paid closer attention to it and thought about it more seriously. What about that conversation made you take it seriously?
Yeah, so that's actually a fun story. I started my career as a venture capitalist back in 2013 and investing in all those kind of frontier tech. By that time, there's no kind of technology called blockchain or Web3 right now. One of the founders, his name is Tom, and he come to me. I met with him for a long time. He's definitely awesome entrepreneur type and always look for the new ideas. And then just one day, early in 2015, he come to me and say, "Hey, this is my new idea." I say, "What it is?" Say, "I'm doing a crowdfunding platform for cryptocurrency. And there is two projects that launching on my platform. One is a gem coin or something." And to me, it's what hell was that? I have never, I only heard about the Bitcoin, but I don't really understand why there is some other kind of meme coin and there's not
Yeah.
even necessary to have a crowdfunding platform. I almost miss this opportunity. I don't really understand what he is building. I like this founder. I think Tom is one of the smartest guy I have ever met. I just don't really understand the idea. Until like one of my partners, who is actually a fintech guy, and he keeps just like convincing us, say, "Hey, Bitcoin is the future. And I believe cryptocurrency has the future." And I don't understand what my partner is saying as well. And end up, our fund didn't really directly invest in them, but my partner puts a personal check into their company.
Mm,
And then later, his company become a kind of stream lab, which is blockchain incubator. And then just like Definity, the first project they incubated. That's the story. Yeah. And then you
wow.
asked me the question, how it changed my mind. I think it really inspired me and triggered me to start look deep into the technology. I
Mhm.
want to figure out why it matters. And
Yeah.
since then, back in 2015, I started looking deeply into the thesis, the foundation of the technology. And at that time, we see Ethereum come up with a white paper with a smart contract platform, and which is the first one. And this make me feel much more understandable because of the smart contract and make it kind of programmable, which means it open up the platform and the possibilities for other developers. They can building things on top of that. So that's really
Yeah.
the starting point of my personal experience to start to look into the blockchain.
Yeah. You mentioned something when you said the technology has to matter. And what about Web3 or blockchain when you were going through this discovery process? Why did it matter to other people to crowdfund, crowdfund and actually build on top of these other platforms and companies? Why did, in your opinion, why did it matter to the global community to actually care and invest time?
Actually, it's not really about the crowdfunding part. This is the application or the need, but it's really about why it matters for us to have a permissionless money for the first place, which this is value proposition for Bitcoin. And then just my mindset at the time only about, okay, so probably it can create money, but what else? It's just like money, right? I would say all the value is about the decentralization, the transparency, permissionless part.
Mhm.
Basically, when I invest in other frontier tech, for example, it's AI, IoT, VR, the technology itself is really innovative. But the platform itself is always centralized and controlled by the big giant institutions and the companies. And which means there's no kind of ownership from the user side, there's no ownership from the developer side. And even just put the difficulty for the developer, if they want to build something, you don't really have the open access to the data. You don't really have the open access to the developer tools and the developer tech stack, right?
Yeah.
And then just like when we see there is a kind of permissionless platform, which means it's open for all the participants to like create the network, own the network, and also open the access to other people who can easily build and use. So that
Yeah.
part really is intrinsic value to me, at least at the beginning when I take a look at Ethereum to come up with a smart contract
Right.
platform
Yeah.
building on top of a blockchain. Yeah.
Did you have an experience with this kind of open source, open development style of building before?
Yeah, definitely. We see there's the internet to start with open source, everything decentralized. And then it start to have the big companies, they build the applications and the application itself become closed source.
Right.
Yeah, because of kind of the profitability nature, right? And then just feel it's more and more difficult to further the innovation on top of the internet. And that
Yeah.
kind of make it a need, say in open source is always very powerful tools to foster the innovation for the newcomers, for the new developers, right? Yeah, I think that's something why I think at this point, back in kind of 2015, when we see the centralized company, they become bigger and bigger, and then there's a need really for
Right.
the new developers to have the open access to the resources and
Mm,
data.
yeah. I was looking at one of your products, the Deepin scan, and seeing the
Yeah,
distribution just across the world was pretty fascinating on where you see a lot of activity. And one thing that was particularly interesting was there's heavy activity in Europe between countries like France and
yeah.
Ukraine, a lot of Greece in there. What about this technology do you feel, in your opinion, creates was this intentional to have such high activity in these areas? Why do we see this technology being adopted locally in those areas in particular?
That's an interesting finding. I didn't really see, particularly like in France and Ukraine, but we see when you look at all the project, our Deepin project on top of platform, and you will see, you never see there's a one kind of startup that can create such a scale, global scale in such a kind of fast pace, right? So that's the beauty of how you can leverage on the community and community be turned to be your kind of infrastructure builders. And then when we look at which regions and countries are really be active, very active in adopting decentralized technology, I would say it really depends on the network itself, really
Mm,
depends on the project itself, right? And also from high level, we see interestingly, develop, developing country, they actually are more actively adopting Web3
mm,
than the developed countries. But of course, it really use case by use case, but that's just like the high
yeah.
level. Yeah.
I was thinking in regards to IoT and
Yeah.
just the whole ecosystem of IoT is fascinating because of the possibilities, how it can be implemented. And I was talking to someone who was building a IoT company focused on it was more like oil and it was more about
Yeah.
pipelines and actually identifying
Energy.
when they
Yeah.
burst. Yeah, things like that. So I'm curious with how does blockchain improve IoT?
Yeah. I would say blockchain normally it's not like an improvement. It's
Mm,
totally different way to organize resources and network. When you
mm,
look at kind of the IoT device itself, it's always decentralized, right? So it's always you can purchase your devices and devices can be in any country. But actually, the problem is how to organize those devices together as a network. And we always see most of the device network, or you will mention IoT network, will be centralized. It will be controlled by big IoT companies or big kind of tech companies, right? But what Web3 contribute here is we will be able to create a decentralized version of device network
mm,
and they leverage on the resources and data which generated by the devices, right?
mm.
But when you look at one single devices, they only can contribute a very limited resources. If you put them together at a global scale, and that's huge. That's a
Yeah,
potential never happened before. How you can create a network and scale it at a global scale in different
yeah,
countries, hundreds of the country, and put those resources together. Either it could be a computing network, could be an AI network, could be 5G wireless network, could be energy
yeah.
network, just like you mentioned, right? So that's just like the huge potential, how Web3 can facilitate. They can facilitate a community build large scale device network at a very fast pace.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about the applications of it. But also, one thing that was fascinating was
Mhm.
as a company, it's one, hard to build software or build a community or build in the way you're doing, but also then to go into hardware and add this whole other layer of complexity. What was the decision behind whether it's investing money, resources, partnership to actually building devices. Why did you do that?
That's a good question. First of all, we are not a hardware company. We are not a manufacturer company. We are an infrastructure. We are a modular Web3 infrastructure company for Deepin, decentralized physical infrastructure networks, right? But at the very beginning, back in 2020, we do have some experiment. We launched two hardware with our manufacturing partners. One is called UCAN. This is the first experiment for us to test the very proposition of devices, which is privacy, right? So you leverage on the
Right.
web as a privacy and security element of the blockchain. It's successful. And we just really go through the entire process, how to do a hardware, a blockchain-based hardware. It's really hard, right? And the second experiment is about we using the concept of dipping to create a hardware, which we call Pebble Tracker, and which is become a data sourcer, right? So real-time data sourcer from the community directly and crowdsource all the data, real-time data, including any location data or temperature data, all the things, right? And then put them together and make it available and usable for the developer, right? So that's
Yeah.
another kind of experiment. And then just we realize there are so much kind of existing resources, which already in the world, all the users, they have over 10 of the devices. And all
Yeah.
those devices, they have computing powers, they have storage powers, they have various of the kind of resource and they can be a kind of data gateway, right?
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the dipping, how we can crowdsource or just like doing the Airbnb, like Airbnb or the Uber. But we are the Airbnb for the device resources or for the real time, real world data, right? Leverage on the existing
Right.
devices, or if needed, they create the new devices. And for us as infrastructure players, our job is how we can help them to accelerate the process for them to building a network or building a blockchain, a
Yeah.
project. And hardware is part of the resources we can provide to them because of our experience. Yeah.
And if I'm someone who's looking at for different infrastructures, pardon me.
Yeah.
If I'm someone who's, looking and to build on top of different infrastructures, what makes IoTeX infrastructure worth building on? What is the reason I would choose IoTeX?
Yeah, I think the modularity, right? So
Mm,
we believe each single kind of innovators, they have their creative ideas, they have their big vision, like what type of network they want to build, right? But they don't really have all the tools right now, right? So they have to build the tools from scratch. But we feel this is a waste of the resources. They don't really need to build all the
yeah.
wells. Their focus will be what's the business look like? What's the exactly use case they want to build? It could be for a vehicle network, for example, right? For maybe an energy
Mm,
network or AI computing network, right? They need to focus on that part, and they need to focus on how to onboard the users or community to contribute resources, or how to onboard the service provider who will be using their kind of network. But they need to have a kind of robust tech stack they can basically plug and play, or they can pick up whatever module they want and then put them together and create their own platform. So we are just like their modular kind of infrastructure provider. We provide different modules and it's chain agnostic. They can still choose whatever chain
yeah.
they want to build or issue their token on. But we mostly focus on the middleware, right? So from off-chain compute to data proof, and provide us the best kind of platform for them to showcase their project the data, the device data, and so that their investor can discover various
Mm,
Deepin projects and decided to participate into their network in the early stage, right? So
yeah.
we provide all those resources and the developer tools, right? So they can pick up whatever they want and then dramatically accelerate their go-to-market
Yeah.
timeline. Yeah, so that's our kind of value proposition here.
And describe WebStream. Where does that come into play? Because I didn't completely understand where it comes to play, and if there is, say, a comparable product that you still work with, maybe that's similar, but if this was like necessary or better. Describe WebStream.
Yeah. When we first look at this space, we feel there are multiple kind of choices for the Deepin project to find a layer one blockchain. So basically the blockchain itself is doing the settlement. It's to issue the tokens and do the transaction and do the proof and smart contract, right? So that's the kind of settlement layer. But specifically for a Deepin network, blockchain itself is not enough. Because of its nature, all most of the DP network they need to handle a lot of the device and device data, and then
Hmm.
they need to just connect the device data and the proof of the data from the real world to the Web3. So that part is not really completely on chain, right? So
Yeah.
there's a kind of a process how to bring the off chain data and bring the proof of the data on chain. And it's unnecessary. All the data processing has to be on chain. It's a waste of resources, on chain resources, right? So
Yeah.
that's why the original position of WebStream is a middle layer. It's a middle layer infrastructure and mainly doing off chain device data computing. And now, just like we have ZK capability as well, and
Yeah.
then put those ZK proof on chain to trigger the smart contract for whatever kind of business logic the builder they want to do. So you
Right.
can see WebStream itself is computing off-chain computing network.
Amazing. When I was looking into your background, one thing that was particularly interesting is the fact that you went the reverse route. You went venture capital, and then you went into becoming a founder, and then you went into becoming a crypto founder, which is even more crazy
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily, it's the Wild West. There's so many different ways this technology can be implemented in the real world, so many other variables we don't know in terms of it being actually scalable and handle the amount of volume that Web 2 companies are managing in terms of consumers and users and things like that. What made you go from investing in companies to getting your hands dirty and starting to really build something that is completely new? It's within its own frontier.
Very good question. I also ask myself if this is the right route. I think when I'm in kind of start to do project by myself as operator and as an entrepreneur, I never want to go back. That's a kind of the fact. But just like when I review my career, I'm lucky enough after graduation in Singapore, and I got a chance to get into the investment kind of area. And first, I was a PE, really focused on the growth stage, late stage for Southeast Asia market.
Mm,
And then I got a chance to come to Silicon Valley, which is 10 years back. And I was so fascinated about all the innovation for the early stage projects. So I got a chance to really join the VC firm and as an early investor. And then
yeah.
just got the opportunity start to look at all the frontier tech, just like I mentioned before. And then just I realized as an investor, you have the opportunity to have a broad view. Like you
Hmm.
will be the
Hmm.
earliest one to really see the trend, right? For the big trend, for the biggest kind of innovation which will shape the world. But as a kind of young investor, you don't really have the experience, right? You don't really
Hmm.
just really get in the shoes of the founders to understand the single details, what really make a founders to create a great company from scratch. I think that is kind of always is a secret for me. And I'm so like into it and really want to be like the one to understand how we can create and grow a great company from the first day.
Ah,
And also just like in another way, if I don't really understand the process, I cannot really be a greatest kind of investor, especially kind of industry, because I don't really have the big picture and have the detail from the strategy to the execution, right? Still, because as an investor, you look at the future opportunity and you just spread your bets into different sectors, right? So
right.
it's a very different mentality, but as an entrepreneur, you're laser focused. You laser focus on kind of one single sector and one niche market and from scratch and grow, scale, and operate. Right. So that's a very different mindset. Right. So
Yeah.
I have to have genuine passion for a particular kind of sector, and I can relate my experience, my vision into this particular sector. So that's why I think I spent over 5, 6 years look for a right kind of sector I can tap into until I found crypto and Web3, which is back
Wow.
in 2017. Yeah.
So much that first of all, I totally respect having to almost like what they say, eat your own dog food, right? You have to be able to understand the experience to even become that much better of an investor. I totally hear what you're saying. Has it changed your investment strategy, the experience?
Definitely. I would say It's really hard, of course, as a fund, right? So when you get into a stage, then you will be able to manage a very kind of a big amount of money, and so that you can have different sectors in very different sectors. If you really want to be a great investors, you have to focus. You really can need to invest in things you understand, right? And you need to focus on one sector, and this sector you need to have intensive domain knowledge, and you need to have the deep understanding about the vision and where this technology will be driving the society into which direction. So I would say just eventually I
Mm-hmm.
become an investor again. I will be more I will be more comfortable in leading a fund which will be focused on one sector. And this sector, I have the best kind of knowledge and expertise. Yeah. So that right now, just like so I'm also handling our ecosystem fund. Right.
Yeah.
And now I'm much more enjoying my job, and I have much more confidence because of my understanding of the industry much deeper than an outsider. And also because of the network, right? So you are
Right.
in this industry and you have the most relevant talent network, founder network. You know who is best for what, right?
Right.
And then just you can always have the brainstorm session. And this starts I'm really enjoy those kind of brainstorm session and to talk about what's a great idea, really what ideas really make sense and what's the biggest need and demand for
When you
for the
say ecosystems, I had a call
market.
with another founder, and they were describing ecosystems because they were a different product but similar structure company. What how do you deploy capital to these ecosystems, and are these ecosystems individuals, companies, small groups of people? Describe to us the ecosystems and how do you actually deploy capital? Is it coins,
Yeah.
injection of funds? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is almost a term for crypto and Web3, right?
Right.
For each kind of network, they see themselves as an ecosystem. First of all, when we talk about ecosystem, mostly it's about the funding source. So most of the ecosystem fund, the funding source mainly from the foundation, right? So for each
Yeah.
foundation, they will have a treasury, and this treasury have certain allocation will be assigned for the ecosystem fund. And the reason is they want to like support and invest in some of the early stage projects which are building on top of their platform, right? Of course, each of them they have their own vision, their own project, but they are some sort like have a synergy with infrastructure of that ecosystem or building with them and contributes or add value to the ecosystem. So normally that's the
Yeah.
scope. And in our ecosystem fund, since we are the largest modular infrastructure platform for Deepin, right? Our main focus will be investing in the Deepin early stage of the Deepin project founders, right? And also including Deepin, of course, and AI, some of the infrastructure, and also some of the device-based A projects. So those are our what type of the project we are looking for.
Yeah.
We are more laser focused and we understand what they are building. And of course, when we select who we support, it's just like a VC play, right? So you are select the best founding team who with a
Right.
kind of long-term vision have the best skills.
What else do they have? Do they have a strong business model already? Do they already have an MVP that they're testing? Do they already have users? Are they
Mm.
pre-users? When you say the best, what are the almost checklist items? They might not need to be revenue or profitable, excuse me, but they have to have these items. What are those items for you?
For us, the most important thing is about the people. Yeah, we're not really looking for those at later stage. We will, if they get there, we will help them to have access to our kind of investment network for the growth funding or further investing in them, right? For us, we are more focused on the very early stage. We want to be the first check to support them, right? But the most important thing is about the funding team, right? If they have the big vision and what's their kind of experience, what's their passion, what's their motivation, right? If they have any kind of track record. I think that's the only thing matters because all the direction, if this team is smart enough, they can pivot to the right direction.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
or we can help them to lead to eventually through rounds of the iteration, they will get there. Right. But
Mm.
the team, we cannot really put our shoes into them. They will be on the driving seat. Yeah. And we are more like the supporting role to provide all the resources, provide, kinds of go-to market kind of network to help them accelerate their process.
And what's the go-to-market strategy for these ecosystems? Being that it's not, say, B2C product or
Mm.
something B2B. It's not necessarily they have these social platforms that genuinely attract. Or what are those platforms for these projects? How do you go to market?
You mean for IoTeX or for those Deepin projects?
The Deepin projects.
The Deepin project, yeah. For most of the Deepin project, I think what blockchain really helps them to scale at the early stage is about the incentive model. So it's about this idea to have a kind of right incentive model to incentivize the most important like participants they want to drive to the network as a first stage. And so that they will have kind of the flywheel really can kick off.
Right.
So I would say this is the hard part because at a very early stage for any of those DP network, they are not really sure which part of the network is the most important thing. And once they can get those resources at certain scale, and then it will help them to drive the entire network grow.
Right.
Yeah. And that part is also what we as a kind of investor and supporters, we can add a value, right? So it's
Mm,
about like how we create kind of the token model, for example, right? So
yeah.
how we create the whole model and make it important to drive the resources like the demand, the supply side, right? The supply side to grow the network in certain stage. And another thing is about how they can, where they can find the initial users, like the community, right? The foundation for many of
Right.
those kind of DP networks, just like a crypto network, right? So where they find the best, the value add network builder. And it's different from DP network is different from the other kind of crypto projects. They have a very important participant we call miner. So those are the device deployer, right? So where they can find those community members, they are passionate about your vision, and then they want to take the high risk and they join your network, even purchase your devices and deploy by themselves and contribute those resources to a network at the early stage. So that's a
Yeah.
hard part. Yeah.
Wow. Taking a step back here, what
Yeah.
initially made you decide to go into technology? There's so many industries in the world, there's so many different career paths. Life can take anyone any direction. Why technology?
Well, I would say technology is the only tool I think normal people can leverage to change the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think technology is the most kind of fair tools if for the ambitious kind of individuals, if they say, hey, no, we really want to move the human society in a good way or bad way. That really depends on you. But for many of the entrepreneurs, they want to be like useful, really to move the world towards a kind of direction they want, right? So that's the best way for you to involve into technology, be part, even a very small part. Not everyone can be Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
But at least if you involved in technology, you can be a small part to contribute your own expertise, no matter if this is development or even just like as a kind of evangelist and advocate. That's a big part, right? And contribute, can devote ourselves into this career and to build it by yourself or be part of the building process and make your technology useful or eventually beneficial to the everyday people. I think that's a kind of the biggest motivation, at least for me, but I think also for many of the technologists or innovators in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about your career, seeing that you've touched so many amazing companies, you're building IoTech and really pushing things forward in the decentralized infrastructure or Internet of
Mm,
Things space. Who along the way helped you get to this point?
good question. I would say there's no kind of single person really, but every day I feel I'm inspired by other people. I'm inspired by the other founders, investors, and some of the biggest role models in the valley, of course, like those kind of biggest technical icon. They inspire everyone here. But just for me, the most some of the biggest inspirations sometimes just like for the normal people I met here. I met with a lot of hundreds, even thousands of the passionate founders. I'm always like got inspired by some young people, very talented with big idea, bold idea, and put their ideas into the work. And this kind of just in reverse kind of inspire me and I want to be really continuously building step by step until put my vision into the reality. I think that's a continuous process. There's not one day. In crypto world, sometimes people say, hey, they come here for the money part. But I see there are a lot of people, they come here for really changing the world. They want to build the technology from scratch, step by step, right? So that's a
Yeah.
kind of a long-term journey. I would say the motivation has to root it into a long-term vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess and if you weren't working on IoTech and investing in these ecosystems that you're working with, what would you be doing?
That's an interesting question. I haven't been thinking about that for a long time. I would say just I will think about some other ways. For myself, I will say I want to do sports, right? So I'm always like enjoy sports, ski, track and field. I will do more sports and in the nature. And I want to create the connection with the nature and focus on my own kind of mental and the body and all the
Mm,
things. And eventually I would say if I'm not doing like blockchain, crypto, I'm really interested in the healthcare and the medical stuff. I really have the interest in like the gene, the beauty of the gene,
mm.
and to try to just spend my time to look at that part and then see if there's any innovations or like anything I can do for that. Of course, I'm not really like from that background, but if I have time, I want to spend time kind of research on that.
What makes
Yeah.
it sounds like a common theme is you're attracted to emerging companies, innovating companies, early
Okay.
stage things that may not have any practical sense yet in terms of its adoptability, in terms of the average person. What makes you so attracted to these types of companies or technologies where it's the average person may not see it day to day, but it has such long-term benefit?
Yeah, because I would say when you look at the humanity, right? So when you look at the kind of the human society, how they evolve step by step, it's not really from just the existing system. It has to be come from the out of the box. Never be like you doing the similar things and compete with a big player and then you create something dramatic or just move the society forward. It's always you need to think about things from the first principle. And sometimes some ideas I met with talk to those kind of founders like quite crazy. Why it matters, but why it matters looks like from now, maybe you don't really understand that. But in 10 years, it's different. Like a lot of the technology right now, you feel, wow, we are getting there. For example, the autonomous cars, right? For example, the artificial intelligence. 10 years ago, a lot of things is like, it's impossible. But now they become part of your life. Where are they from? It's not they just appeared. So there's kind of decades of the research and decades of the hard work in innovative
Yeah,
work. It just like maybe come from kind of some researchers like ideas, crazy ideas, even like imagined ideas, or it's just like from sometime from their dream, right? Or it's just from the first principle point of view, theoretically, there's a possibility, but there's
mm,
no practical way to get there. But because normally kind of sometimes those bold idea turn to be the biggest innovation force, which kind of eventually change the world. So
yeah.
I think I'm really just fascinated by that part of the world. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I love
yeah,
it. I
yeah.
think those bold predictions, like you said, things that weren't available technology-wise are becoming actual. Even ChatGPT, the average person can start using AI intelligence to even start implementing that into their normal lives. Autonomous cars,
And
they're
also,
already
I think
testing them. Good.
one part is very important. Is about we need to have the tolerance for the failure, especially for the early stage kind of investor. Sometimes they say you don't when you invest, you forget about it. It's not about the return gain. It's about you buying the vision and the people, and you have to like plant seed and you put the funding into so many kind of talented people and let them try.
Yeah,
So maybe 99% of the experiments will fail, but eventually there is a kind of some cool idea can work. So
right.
so it's already worth it. It's very worth it. It's like only for kind of one idea, eventually it breaks through.
Yeah. If I was a fan of yours and I was curious in how to actually get to where you are today, what steps along the process would you recommend someone who wants to work with companies like you or invest and really get into the day-to-day mechanics that you're so excited about? How do you do that?
Yeah, I would say for all the kind of the young talents, just be open minded. Don't like asking the other people to identify the success. right? So you are your own identifier and have
Mm.
a strong kind of belief in yourself, in your like own perception of the world, how it should go with, right? And also really get yourself involved into the right network, right? So the network with kind of a lot of the right mind, unless there has to be like successful people, right? Of course, you need to have the mentors, role models who, eventually make things work, right? Those are, you can learn from them, but also you need to make yourself into the environment. And this environment have a lot of opportunities for the changes and for the innovations, and not a static innovation, static kind of environment, which just asks you to follow the rules and you
Right.
just do what they ask you to do, right? So I think the environment itself is very important. It provides different opportunity. But for the young people specifically, I would say I'm not, you don't really have to quit your college and start your kind of project straight away. I think that life is a marathon, right? So it's a long-term game. And then you need to keep learning and keep the curiosity and get all the resources you can to learn and get your hand dirty, even just like it's a kind of small project. For example, some of them, they come to me and say, hey, how I should start a blockchain project, right? So I say, hey, become a user first, right? So you just, have you ever used all the tools by yourself? All the Deepin protocols, all the DeFi protocols, all the blockchain layer one, layer two.
Yeah.
Do you understand all that before you really be a kind of active users and really understand what the user need? And then it's very hard for you to be a founder because you don't really understand what your audience need.
Yeah.
So get your hands dirty is very important.
If I am someone with a project or want to get into blockchain, where do I start learning the information I need to get my hands dirty, get involved? Maybe I have a wallet, I've used it, but I really want to start, say, building in Elixir or in Solana or these other technologies. Where do I
Yeah, go to the docs. Look at
to
the docs from for all any kind of ecosystem, Solana, Ethereum, right? Coins, they all have very good resources of the docs to try to read and understand if you are a developer, right? And try to build something, leverage on the tools and docs they provide, right? And also, if you really want to have normal, like basic knowledge, there are so many resources. Go to some of the podcasting. Very easy for you to understand the basic idea, the concept, what they are talking about. Try to understand what they are talking about, right? But it's
Yeah.
not enough. You need to try by yourself. So that, for example, there are a lot of narratives say, hey, how about the ownership, authority, a lot of the terms which only exist in crypto. But it just not only follow the terms. You need to just use the product so that you can really understand what this term means,
Right.
right? To understand, have your own way to understand what's the value, why it exists, why a decentralized money matters, why a decentralized network matters, and those type of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Sounds like surround
Don't
yourself with the yeah, surround yourself with
emerge,
information and yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
immerse yourself into the entire network and talk to people and
Right.
engage with the community, engage with different community. And each community, it's interesting. They have different culture, they have different philosophy. And if you get into kind of ape in NFT club, it will
Yeah.
be so different from if you get involved into kind of the developer, the Ethereum developer community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
finding your position, eventually you will know which community you really belong to. So align with their vision, you want to be part of it, and then be active, right? Try to find your way to contribute.
Yeah. Thinking about anything new and exciting nowadays, professionally, personally, what's exciting for you and what you have going on?
I would say 2024 will be a very
Yeah.
exciting year
Yeah. Yeah.
for the entire Web3, and so many new things will happen, right? So Bitcoin, of course, the mind is in Bitcoin. But I think much more than that. Dipping is definitely one of the biggest exciting sector we should look for. It's $2.2 trillion market right now, and including like the AI, and it will be 10 trillion. It's much bigger than DeFi and other kinds of crypto combined. The potential is there, right? And also the technology is ready. I think that's a big sector you cannot miss. And in other like areas, we see a lot of the other kind of innovations almost in every kind of single sectors like DeFi and Web3 game. And we see all the layer two scaling solution. Those are all have interesting development, right? So I would say definitely next year will be a very exciting year for the
Amazing.
entire society. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Anything you're reading or listening to right now that has given you little bits of inspiration?
Yeah. So a lot of reading, a lot of kind of podcast, everyday podcasting. I'm a listener to Unchained, of course, A16, Z crypto. And I feel like, but sometimes I will listen to the non-crypto podcast. I just mentioned it's about the biology, it's about like the AI. I will listen to the different irrelevant to our kind of industry. Sometimes you can get more out of those kind of sector. So
Yeah,
so make yourself open-minded, and those cross-border information really can help you to understand why we are here now and what where will bring us up to.
yeah, yeah. Coming up to the end of the show here, one of the questions I'd love to ask, is there any question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think you has everything. Yeah, I'm really enjoy. Yeah, I think one question. My question is, Julian. So, what's your vision and what's your mission here? What's your
Yeah,
mission this year, or just what really make you excited?
yeah, there's a lot of things. When you see the overall landscape of technology, there's so many different ways that news can surprise you any day. So that just always keeps you on my toes. On a personal level, we're building out an amazing community called Grupo, where we're connecting remote engineers, people in tech, designers, people who have really great skills, just want to find community. And I'm really just bullish on everything community based. Everything is community based nowadays. Products are becoming community based, networks are becoming community based, professional or otherwise, and there's it's not a one size fits all anymore, which I like, and I think crypto and Web3 is really pushing that community forward, or that reality forward, where it's companies and ecosystems will have to share, and will breed some amazing collaborations, but there'll be a lot of dynamic changes that we'll see. And I think personally, I'm excited because it's been so stale for the last few years. The podcast, we ran a successful podcast for startup founders behind company lines, which was immensely successful. And really, the Grupo podcast is to continue that success, but also to amplify what's going out there in the world. What are people building? How can I start building, getting involved? What are the smart people doing today? How can I catch them? How can I catch Jing in her office and really get to the grasp of what are amazing companies doing? What are the decisions they're making? Why are they making those decisions? Because I think the more information that's out there, the more you can give that to a community of people, the more exciting, fun, positive benefits. Everything just moves forward. So my vision is just to be the inspiration and just continue pushing that forward however I can, talking to founders, giving thoughts, opinions, support. Yeah, at this point in my career, building day to day is fun, but the other stuff, it's okay. How can I just get involved more, play around with different people's ideas, brainstorm, things like that? I think from what I hear from the 300 founders I've interviewed, that's what you got to
Mm.
do to be successful. You got to work really hard on what you're doing and then talk to a bunch of people about it and talk to them about what they're doing and just be a friend.
That's
Yeah.
a fantastic mission. That's exactly just like what I say. What you are doing is really contribute hugely to building kind of the community and to educate the people, right? All the interviews, you bring up the stories, the background stories, and you try to educate your audience about something
Yeah.
something new to the technology. And also, just like you mentioned, I think the remote work really kind of change everything, change the entire kind of structure of I think the corporate globally.
100%.
Take us as a kind of example, like before COVID, in like most of our core team based in Silicon Valley. And then now, like we are our team member across five kind of continents and across over 10 countries.
Right.
So yeah, so everyone like work remotely, but still we have such a kind of strong tie and work together, even more efficient than like
Yeah.
we work together. And we have been able to work with so talented people. And actually, a region previously we will not be able to have access to those talents, right? They are
Yeah.
kind of live remotely. They are in the country in Europe, in Southeast Asia, in different countries. Yeah.
Yeah, for companies to be successful, they have to have the right people with the right skills. And now it's
Yeah.
even that much more easy to and accessible to find those people because they're everywhere in the world. And it doesn't matter where they're currently living, but you can find them. And we have a team internally where they just have such an amazing, unique skill set. and they're in parts of Brazil, the Philippines, we're in the
Yeah.
US, and it doesn't matter because it's so efficient. We're the right people, the right team. And then as having that core together, I was gonna ask you actually, how do you build in such a volatile ecosystem as from a company structure standpoint? Like you can't hire and fire everyone like a SaaS company, but you got to keep really strong core team as the market is
Yeah.
unpredictable at times or based on some kind of trend or wave. How do you do that? What structure do you have and how do you keep that core team together throughout and build continuously?
Long-term vision. I would
Yeah.
say just it's very important for the corporate level. You have a kind of long-term vision, and this vision is bigger than founders. It's bigger than the ambition of any kind of single individuals, right? So this vision make everyone aligned, and this will also can just like help us determine who is the right person, who is the right kind of person to join our team as a talent for the first place, right? And everyone know they are here. They coming here because they are excited and passionate about making this big vision into reality. And so
Right.
that the market itself will not really affect what you do on everyday level, right? And we also believe in it's not about the price, it's about the value, right? When the value is there, when we really building the value, the network building the value, and value can be reflected in the market eventually. Of course,
Mm,
it will not really in the same pace, right? So we cannot predict markets and we cannot really directly affect the price. But what we can do is like building the value. We make sure we are kind of grow the value, and those type of things actually can accumulate it, and also it's much more kind of predictable, and it's
yeah.
also much more in your own hands, right? And I think we have a very strong team, and each of them, when you talk to them individually, you will say each of them, they are very talented in their way. And each of them, they are very aligned with long-term value, which IoTeX want to achieve. So I think that's the best kind of asset we have. And we can move so long, starting from 2017. It's a lot of kind of just like they see us a kind of OG project, but we are
Yeah.
become kind of stronger, the team-wise stronger, and we have better team members. Some of them, they have been with us from the day one and they never change. And our co-founder never changed. They are still so committed to the vision. I think that's the important thing. But of course, because of the remote work, this kind of gave us a better, much better, wider access to the talents globally. So that's really, really important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Jing, that's a great question to end on. Last thing is where can we find you? Where can we be a fan of what you're doing, what the company is doing? Give us your
Yeah.
social plugs. Where can we be a
Yeah.
fan of what you have going
Yeah,
on?
follow our kind of Twitter, follow our x.com, so outtest.io, and it's our website, and join our community, our TG, on Telegram and Discord, and subscribe our newsletter, right? So we have weekly newsletter to update you about everything about the Deepin and everything about Outex, right? And we have a lot of events. This year we initiate an event brand called Real World. Our next big event will be in East Denver, February 2024. And we will have kind of a lot more event, and even just like for the community like yourself, right? So we're happy to support you if you are passionate about the dipping sectors, and we can work together to host like some of the virtual event. Maybe we have a lot of Twitter space to focus on one topic and invite the dipping founders, investor, QL, and we work together, right? We talk about all the topic and then try to just make the audience understand more and how they can involve. So there are multiple ways to get involved. They are here. So
Amazing. Yeah.
to help
Amazing,
everyone.
Jing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to go through your experience, your background, what you're working on now. I'm sure we could have had probably an episode that lasts 10 times as long, but we'll keep it we'll keep it here for now. But thank you again for joining the show. Of
Thank you so much for having me.
course.
Take care. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching the episode. The Grupo Podcast is about technology and working in a remote world. If you like what we're doing, please like, comment, subscribe, and support us interviewing the leaders of today.